it's noon. Oh, look at that. It's 12:01. I apologize. I know everyone was really out there in internet land being like, where's Jen? Where's Untangled? Why isn't she on yet? She's 1 minute late. Ah, it's okay. Everybody rest assured. Everybody calm down. The internet can relax. It's Jen. I'm here. We have a new version of Untangled, my episode on conversations on digital and AI for social good. We were just talking about this, and the founder, and I'm going to just start calling myself queen of our partners, because why not? I can. I have the power to do that. I am joined today by my friend, fellow rabble-rouser in the AI world and beyond, Valerie Ehrlich, also founder and queen of Mission Bloom. Valerie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you on the show today. So I started Untangled like a year ago. We started talking about digital conundrums and whatnot. And now there is really no larger digital conundrum than what has fallen in our laps in the last few years of artificial intelligence. Specifically, I guess I'm doing generative and agentic, but really we spend a lot of time talking about mostly the generative side. We did have Sal from Daytara. We talked about predictive AI too. So we do try to hit the angles, sort of help people understand the different things that are going on out there. We're going to talk more of the, see, these are my last two episodes of Untangled this season, and then I'm going to take a summer break because God knows we all need that.
Yeah.
And so the last two episodes, we're doing some meaty kind of the philosophical side of AI. Last week was very practical. Ryan was showing us a tool he built, which was awesome. But today's episode and next week's episode, to round out May, are more of these like, what is this? What are we talking about? Today is, what does responsible use of AI look like? Valerie, that was your title, your topic. Before we dive into the meaty stew that is responsible AI, tell everyone a little about yourself, where you come from. Tell us about Mission Bloom too.
Yeah, sure. So was it my idea? Because I feel like I opened the email and was like, really? Am I going to talk about this? Actually, no, the original idea was ethical. And I was like, we're going to shift this to responsible, which is what we'll be talking about.
We'll talk about that
today. Yeah. So hi, I'm Valerie. My company is Mission Bloom. And I am helping nonprofits and foundations figure out AI and what that looks like. But my background is in adolescent identity development and human learning and development, and then program evaluation, and then leadership. So I know a lot about how people develop in systems and in organizations, how we understand behavior change, and how we measure it, and then what kind of leadership is important for tending to all of those things. And as kind of an always like side techie, like not an official techie, but like I got to play with an Apple Newton like when they first came out. And so like I've always had this like desire for tech. So naturally AI hit. I was skeptical at first, and then
we all were.
With it. And yes, of course, as we should be, and still should be. But yeah, so now I'm just parlaying all of those skills into the AI world.
Awesome. Yeah. So what is we'll talk about this, I guess, but a little bit more about like, what are you doing specifically at Mission Bloom? I didn't actually even know that level of detail about your full adolescent behavioral background. So that makes sense. Talk about something where you have to really understand like what's going on, what's making people tick, and how they use this. I don't know. I hate even calling it a tool because it's not even a tool. It's like a whole different like operating mindset. But how people approach it, and then how they're using it, and how that shapes sort of what you get out of it is also something I find infinitely fascinating. Of like everybody, like all of us come to the table with our own particular baggage, whatever history, and I feel like you get very different experiences. But even though it's the same thing, everybody's interaction with it, it's like an infinite number of outcomes because of the individuality of experience that's happening. So that's interesting. Like that's your background, and now you're doing AI work is sort of like it does sort of have a nice overlap. But
Yeah.
so you're doing a little bit more off the front end. Do you do the whole thing, do the whole gamut of like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what your deal is. Let's get you set up on it. Let's do some of the digging in. Let's do some of the building. You're kind of doing the gamut.
Yeah, a lot of people, this year in particular, I feel like last year was a lot of like, we know we need to do something and we don't know what to do. And now this year it's a lot more like, okay, we're still not 100% sure, but we've got to get started.
Yeah.
and
We still
and
don't know
so
what the hell this thing is.
what does that look like? And so that looks like a policy, and some practice guidelines, but also then like tending to the people in the organizations
Yeah.
and thinking about the organization. And so kind of the sweet spot for me lately has been organizations, small size organizations, who are trying to figure out how to apply this internally, not necessarily like externally
Yeah.
just yet, but getting clear. So much of this work is alignment building, cutting through language and our terminology like responsible, like AI,
Yeah.
making sure that we actually know what we're all talking about together. And then based on that and based on the values, because I work exclusively with mission driven organizations. So, how do we keep the mission forefront in everything that we're doing?
Yeah.
And how are we going to continually call that up and make our decisions based on that versus the tool or the hype and doom cycle?
I know. Hype and doom cycle feels pretty intense right now. It's like, I feel like it's getting, that's a faster loop or something that's happening right now. Like, I think we went through a lot of hype, then there was some doom, and then there's, but I feel like they're like, I was saying that last week. I'm like, I feel like it's almost like weekly, daily, almost of like, okay, it's a, oh no, no, yeah, oh no, and you're gonna go like, okay, what is it? And now hearing about like the young people booing at
Yeah.
commencement speeches and stuff like that, you're like, oh, okay, it's real.
Yeah.
Like, there's some real resistance. It's an interesting space. I mean, I have a son in college and I have a daughter in high school, and it is
Mhm.
really challenging. I am happy to be like my 50-year-old self out here being like, I can figure out how I want to do this or not. I got career, a lot of career legacy to build upon and all this other stuff. So it's kind of like but for them just starting out, it's really tricky. Like it's really challenging. I mean, they have both been like, how do you try and like decide what you want to do? And I'm like, because you don't even know what to doing is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. I think it's going to look very different than what doing has been, for the last many years. Obviously, the internet was a huge change. We've gone through these. So as we kind of think about like their usage, kids are like going, I don't want this. It feels very unstable or unwieldy, or we just want to have like an opportunity to say, gosh, I don't want to just be stuck basically kind of working with the robots all day long. Can I not do other things? And it feels like they're being funneled into a space. And so you kind of say, well, it's going to balance out somewhere. We assume
Yeah.
it's not just like, I think that some of the AI leaders right now are like, it's going to be in every single thing you do and it's going to change every single thing. And yes and no. Like, I think we'll see how it goes. But so as we're navigating this, I think the idea of sort of this sort of how we use it, how we're shaping the use of it right now will impact even their futures of like what does doing and career and life and just getting along in the world look like. And so when we talk about ethical, sustainable, responsible, like all these labels we were talking about before we started, like I think this is something that our sector in particular has been noodling with and really grappling with since this stuff kind of burst on the scene. And there was, again, a lot of excitement, a lot of then the hype doom, whatever. But we've been just sort of at the sidelines being more like, let's talk about this. Let's think about this more than just like dive right in. How are you approaching that in the work that you do? And sort of we can unpack the responsible, like where you said, I started with ethical and we landed with responsible. Maybe like let's unpack that first before we get into how that impacts the work that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like to go back to the dictionary. So, as a former academic, I will always go to the reference section.
Yeah.
And so if you look up the word responsible, you will see in the Merriam-Webster, the definition is answerable or accountable as for something within one's power, control, or management. I feel like as humans, if I hear ethical or even sustainable, I may not have a clear idea of what that means, or I may have a clear idea of what that means, but feel no agency or ability to actually be able to do that. It can feel too big.
Right.
Whereas responsible is like bringing it
I'm in charge.
down
Yeah.
into like you and your. And as I was thinking about this conversation today, I was like, oh, you know what? If I go back to like why I initially started exploring AI, it was like one, of course, it was a new thing and I was curious, but I had a moment where I was like, this is going to change my kids' lives. And if I'm going to help them, if I'm going to be a good parent, I need to
Right.
understand this. So thinking about the conversation today, I was like, oh, right, I feel answerable and accountable to my kids, both for the world I'm creating
Right.
and contributing to, but also like how I'm helping them navigate everything day to day. And
Yeah.
so that was my entry, was this point of responsibility. But I think when we use the responsible term, we can help people ask, like interrogate it, like who are you responsible to? Who is your organization responsible to? When you're making certain decisions, who are you responsible to in this moment? What's their point of view? Do you making assumptions about what's actually important to them? So you
Yeah.
can really just start to unpack it, but in a way that we can make some decisions and still kind of hold it lightly, because the ethics part, I don't know if it's possible, right, to have ethical AI. I think there's some fascinating,
Yeah.
like small model experimentation and all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff that's going on that I hope, like, people in the like futures world are really
Right.
doing a lot of cool stuff around. But like in the day to day, making my decision making, I can feel more grounded in responsibility than in the other terms.
Yeah. Ethical is pretty heavy. And I do feel like I mean, I don't know. I feel like we try to, most, hopefully, most of us try to be
Try to be
as
ethical.
ethical as possible just in our everyday decision making and things that we do generally. So that one definitely gets into the like, but is it ethical on the how it's being created? That's completely out of my control.
Yeah.
I mean, ethical, but is it ethical? No. I mean, let's be fair. It's not really. So that it's the kind of a non-starter. A little bit like, well, we
Right.
can't. Again, I'll do my weekly plug for my friends and my tools that are really working hard to say we don't, work on the data centers that are destroying communities. We really try to correct for biases and all these other things that are in the, in the internet at large, and we're trying to make it a more ethical experience. But that's sort of like, I feel like on the creating side of a
Mhm.
platform that you can then say, I can support different
Mhm.
tools based on the decisions I'm seeing the people running those companies are making.
Yeah.
And I'm an ethical minded person. But I like the responsible version and then sustainable. I did have a guest and we talked a lot about sustainable use. So I do think there's practical tips though that I think come into a responsible
Mhm.
use of the
Mhm.
platform. So I feel like there's sustainable and ethical components that tuck under, to me, of
Oh
that
yeah.
responsible label, which feels broader. I'm landing on responsible as well, so I was like
Yeah.
happy to see responsible, but I also like that idea of like it's your agency, which is actually where we're going to talk to Gozi about next week. It was agency in the AI space. What does that even
Yeah.
mean? So we're going to pack that even
Nice.
further, but it's sort of this: your responsibility is it's your choices you're making. You do have choices. You have your agency here, to the extent that you,
Mhm.
yes, are shaping what you are doing or not doing in the platform. So
Yeah.
it's like when you think about right now all the stuff that's going on in the world, and you feel like, oh my god, I can't impact big policies or whatever, and you're like, I have my sphere. I
Yeah.
can only really influence what's going on in my sphere. My kids, my immediate family, with my friends, maybe my community, different spaces, and different people's spheres are
Mhm.
different, different size, but most folks have a relatively small sphere. So you think like,
Yeah.
I need to act responsibly in my
Yeah.
sphere. So what does that look like in your day to day, or how do you help people make responsible uses of AI happen?
Yeah. It's funny when you were talking, I was thinking about how I think sometimes we use the responsible or ethical or sustainable kind of term to then result in like avoidance or like that we're not there yet or we can't
Yeah.
do this yet because we can't do it that way. And I've really found kind of the opposite. And so I got to the agency place, so I have to watch Gozies next week because I was doing the work of trying to interrogate AI through an equity lens, which I thought
Mm,
might be impossible. But when I gave that workshop, the number one takeaway was that people felt a sense of agency. And
mm,
I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." And I realized that if we actually have the hard conversation around what does responsible look like? So asking people like, who are the people you're accountable to? What are the values that you always want to uphold? What are for organizations, what's your secret sauce? What's the thing that you never want to trade
mm.
on that is always going to be core? Like, as people get grounded in that, and then you bring that into like, okay, if this is what's so important to you, here's how you could prioritize that when you're picking this tool, or here's how you could prioritize it when you're considering this use, like
Yeah,
even note takers or something like.
exactly.
And so if you're able to do that, then I think the responsibility conversation actually becomes a way of building agency for people because they're grounded now in their realm. If you're a
Mm,
manager, what does responsibility look like to your, to your direct reports? And
mm.
how are you going to use the tool in a way that supports that? And so all of a sudden you can I mean, I see people take a deep breath and like, okay, like let me think about, yeah, here's what I really value, or here's what I wish I could do that I can't do,
Mhm.
you know, based on all the stuff I'm dealing with. And so what would it look like for me to only really use it in that way? And so
Mhm.
I think it ends up being an invitation when you first have the willingness to go there, which
Yeah.
is why I think Beth Cantor just posted on LinkedIn about organizational infrastructure.
Mhm.
Like, yes, 100%. I think for organizations thinking about your learning infrastructure and how you're building psychological safety, how are
Yes.
people actually going to be experimenting and sharing where it works and where it doesn't work, like that's a part of organizational responsibility that
It
is
is.
super important and frankly should be the skills that we built during the DEI era. And so if you built those well then, it's probably serving you well now, but if you
Yes.
didn't, then you're probably struggling with AI too, because this is an identity based thing.
And I do think it is 100% on the alignment piece. It's a frame it also as this opportunity for creating alignment where you might have struggled with that in the past. This is a big adoption process that, unlike, because I've been doing technology adoption projects for 20 years, and it's usually like this little team over here, or these, whatever, and we struggle with how siloed organizations are when they adopt just regular technology, and you try to break through some of those barriers and try to help it become a platform that is used more widely to create, like, we should all be thinking about one big communications calendar, for example, or
Right.
whatever, and then you're like, but that's more easily siloed still.
Mhm.
Something like this is like, there's no way you can sort of pretend that it's like, well, this just impacts the blah 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 team, or
Right.
it's like, this is why when I'm like, I need to talk to whoever, I need to go up like 3 levels in the organization and be like, no, this needs to be, to your point, there's a lot of leadership level decisions that need to be made to help set up the framework for adoption in the right way. Exactly the space safety, like figuring out how to let people experiment, give them some guardrails, but let them have space to experiment and make room for the skeptic. Make
Yes.
room for
Yes.
the
And the
person
opt out.
like, I don't really like this. Like, that's okay. Let's talk about that. Not like, tough shit, get him, get on the train. It's leaving the station. It's like, stop and like
Yeah.
let's examine what's going on there, which is to me the responsibility of the leader at
Yeah.
the organization to take a temperature and see what's going on and say, what does adoption look like here? And maybe in a 30-person organization is going to be a longer, more thoughtful process than in a 5-person organization. Obviously, so you
Hmm.
have to be like a lot of different flavors. Like I said, yeah, everyone's bringing their own experiences into their then
Yeah.
adoption journey. So you can't just be like, okay, one size fits all, which is
Yeah.
tricky,
Yeah.
but that's the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk more about how right now are you do you generally come in and work at the top level? Are you working across teams and trying to do this adoption work where no matter where people are sitting inside the organization? And I guess really like what's that look like and how are
Yeah.
you advising folks at the various levels inside organizations?
Yeah. The best way is to work with the AI committee, assuming that it's been set up well.
Yeah.
So, organizations that have an AI committee, whatever they want to call it, task force that is cross-sectional, that has a range of people who are excited and people who are skeptical, that's committed to building alignment and figuring out, the direction that they want to go in, like that's the best place to work. And that tends to be like kind of one level down, right? So there will be like an executive sponsor or
Yeah.
something, but the task force has been given power and funding and decision making authority ideally, but they have the charge and the insight into the organizational culture.
Hmm.
But 9 times out of 10, this is in addition to their full-time job,
Right.
which
Right.
is figure out this big thing along with your full-time job. And
You got this.
so like my role is to be like a catalyst, but also like
Mhm.
a steward. I actually like the steward role a lot because they know their culture. I can keep an eye on all the big questions and the changes in the field. And because I have a background in emergent learning, I can help ask the right questions. I can help tease apart fuzzy language. I can help be that consistent container that reminds them, well, when you started out, this was a core value. How is that showing up now? And so
Mhm.
it really enables me to truly serve those committees like as more of like a leverage point to just help them do their work because they're the experts in the work and the organizational
Right.
culture,
They're
right?
doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it's hard to do that yourself when you've got a full-time job and performance reviews and yada yada. So,
I mean, yeah. And.
right, exactly.
Not
And the world, right?
and yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it's how do you make space for the resistors? Because I know that, like we just said, like young, I don't know if again, if it's, and if you're seeing that it's age
Mm,
specific or if it's like, because I feel like I've got older folks who are more scared or not sure.
yeah.
There's like a middle ground that feels good. I don't, right now in my work and in my team, we don't have like 20, well, actually, I do have one like 25-year-old, but he's all in. Like, he's
Yeah.
not in the like, he's all in. So I don't, I find in my experience is like not huge, but like it's more of like an older mindset, older generation
Hmm.
that is a little bit like more of the resistor. Is that what you're seeing, or are you seeing it kind of across the board?
Across the board, older and younger.
Yeah, but like the
So,
middle swath is like,
yeah, yeah. The a lot of the working moms are like, please help me.
please, dear God,
This is actually
does
helpful.
this actually come with its own robot that can clean my house?
Right,
Would
right.
that be
Yeah,
amazing
well,
for my
yeah, that is
dinner?
what would
That'd
be
be cool.
helpful.
Yeah.
The laundry. Yeah. Yeah, but I am seeing both. But what excites me, so the commencement speech, rabble rousing stuff, like put my adolescent emerging adulthood hat back
Right.
on. And like to me, that's agency. Like, so I get excited by that because it's engagement and participation, right? In terms of like what people do or don't want. So it's not giving up and just kind of taking that inevitable frame that is what big tech wants us to feel, the inevitability. So
Yeah.
I say lean in on the skeptics. I invite skeptics to engage in some way, like, but figure out, like, what does that actually look like? What does it mean to engage? Does it mean you have to touch the tool, or does it mean that you're the one that's always thinking about and holding that core stuff that's really valuable? And how is the organization going to support the people that want to resist or opt out? Because maybe that's what responsible looks like to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
The one thing
Right.
that concerns me is the sort of shame aspect, I guess, and like
No.
the judging others and like the number of people who come to me and are like, I'm scared to mention this, or like,
Yeah.
you know, people can't say, in a Zoom chat that they're using AI. And so like that's never good. So that's the one thing that gives me pause.
Yeah. I feel like, again, on the leadership seat, it's, and again, whether it's the leader of the organization or at least like the head of the committee or whatever, it needs to be set up for all voices and, all sort of reactions to and experiences with are welcome. Like you have
Yeah.
to allow the gamut of experiences at the table and help folks come at it as they're able. I think it's a
Right.
weird space to sort of like kind of jam AI down everyone's throat,
I
and
mean,
it's a
the
hard
recent
spot
research is
because it's like
showing like that's not working.
right, but we're
Yeah.
also trying to say how do you though adapt and how do you adopt it at an
Right.
organization when you have like people who are like I'm opting out, and you're like,
Yeah.
huh, but we're going to change the way we do some things here using
Right.
these tools, and so it's like I want to respect your individual choice. And I also am like, yes, and this is how we're going to do this now. I don't know if
Yeah.
you come against that in your work and how folks are sort of getting through those kinds of moments because that feels
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
feel tough.
They are tough. I think, I was this morning going back to like, what are the four core leadership competencies? Because I
Yes.
was at Center for Creative Leadership, and self-awareness is one, a learning agility, influence, but communication is the other one. And I do think that part of this work and part of the work of responsibility and responsibly implementing this, whatever that looks like, is communication in to the extent that you're being clear, that you're being clear around the way, if you're in a decision making position in an organization, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What is this actually going to look like? What are going to be the ways that people can raise concerns? What concerns
Right.
are you going to take, and what concerns are you're not in a position to do anything about it?
Right.
And can you be clear about it? At
Yeah.
Work at the Ready had a great podcast about this very thing. It's like you have to be able to clearly communicate your limits, and that gets back to the responsibility, your zone of control. And
Yeah.
I think people need that clear communication too, so they can decide like, okay, what does it look like for me to stay here,
Right.
to do this work? But without that clarity, it's not fair to anyone.
It's true. It's true. So there's like a lot of big ones, but it's not. I think it's and I think the way you sort of frame this in some of our kind of materials was sort of this idea of like this is really what it takes to sort of move into these spaces, start to get past like I guess we need to do something with this thing and like figure out how it's going to work in our organization, to building what you said like conditions to keep asking questions.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
like I think I was like, oh, I'm gonna lift that out and be like, continually thinking about it. Am I creating a space? Am I creating a system? Am I creating the conditions where we're able to keep the open dialogue, conversation, let people come and move through their individual lane of adoption and comfort, and where they are able to continually voice discomfort and
Yep.
resistance, or then all the excitement, and like we're all coming to this space inside the organization together and not feeling like it's like none of the shaming, none of the whatever, none of like, oh, you look what you did all this, you went in and you learned this stuff, so you get like gold stars, but you over there
Right.
that are kind of not that sure and a little slower to get in the game, like you're not being, it's not punitive, it's not like
Yeah.
but like it's a hard space, and it's hard as leaders. Go back to one of my very favorite episodes with Mason about the qualities of leadership.
Yeah.
that's a big one. And I think right now there's a disproportionate burden, as there always is, on the leaders inside an organization to really set it up well and set the stage well. And I do think, a lot lands on any of these committees, of course, whatever, but it's that the ways in which leadership at an organization is empowering and setting the stage, even for that committee to work in, is huge and very, very, very important to keep these kinds of things happening. And I think you called it out, right? Like, if you weren't doing this work well in the space of DEI adoption, like, this is now your moment. This is a lot of it's a different, obviously, but similar need for the conditions for conversation and communication inside an organization.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So last thoughts as we wrap up, anything you want to say, like your last takeaway for folks, or any little tidbits, or you say, hey, call me, you're getting stuck with this stuff, give me a call.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm supposed to say subscribe to my newsletter, but do that. But no, I was thinking about, like, what's the last thing I want to say? And I should have had something prepared beforehand, but like the idea, I think I want to have a campaign to, like, so when I went to the dictionary, like, responsible is an adjective, but in terms of AI, like, I want it to be a verb or an adverb.
Verb, right?
Yeah, like, because it's ongoing. And the reality is that we are so early in this transformation, right? Like, we're all feeling swirl because it is swirling, and we're so early. And so it feels like if someone is, resisting, or if we don't have our AI strategy in the next 3 months, like, then, everything is lost. And, like, no. And especially for our sector, like, we have a moment to really think about this and lead in a different way, but also, like, having responsible be more of a verb, a practice, a thing that we're doing, lets us keep coming back to the table and saying, in what ways has our use the last 6 months been responsible? Where have we not? How can we do that differently? We all left ChatGPT and went to Claude, and now they have the Memphis data center. Okay, but if you've had the values discussion, if you've aligned on that, that gives you a point, a place to say, you know what? Okay, here's what we do next. And so,
what we do. Yeah.
But it's only if you've been really treating it as, a human, imperfect practice. And, like, that's why I'm always wearing my little fractal, is like,
Nice.
because, like, the smallest things create the biggest things, right? So, like, responsibility in the zone that you have control is meaningful. Like, this is how we create the future that we want.
And it ripples. I think
and it
ripples a lot. And so, and I do think, but to your point, it's a very, like I said, we're in the jello, and it's not hardened, and so we're still swimming,
which is a good thing, right?
It is a good thing. It is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it will harden. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it feels like it's going to be semi-gelatinous for a while. Like, it's like a little bit more gelatinous than it was 2 years ago. Feels like it's less soupy, maybe a little more chunky in there. But it's like, they haven't, like, we haven't, like.
But how do we want it? Like, what's the shape of the mold that we're hardening into to go with your Jello?
Yeah. Yeah. We are still shaping that. And I think that's the big one, is keep the conversation open, keep that responsibility framework front and center. I like responsibilify. I was sitting here like, how do we turn this into a verb?
Responsibilify.
Or something. Responsify. I don't, whatever. We'll figure it out. Because
we need to go see if that domain is taken.
So if you do that out there, and right now you're out there, you're listening, you're like, responsibilify.com, responsibilify AI. I lose it on the branding every time. It's okay. But I like the idea that it's an active practice. It is very much shaping. We are shaping. It's all being shaped, but we're active. I think that's the space. If you're in it, that's one of my main talking points to folks who are very resistant, is just this idea of, like, but it's extremely powerful and all-encompassing, and it's going to become a little bit more and more. It's not going to change every single aspect of every single thing everybody does everywhere, but I still will see. I carry my mountains with me all the time, so I can still want to go, I'm going to escape to the mountains. I don't want this. But it's important I think, to have the voice and, like, get your agency back into the space of saying, like, but if I opt out, it will continue the oligarchy will continue to make decisions that disproportionately impact and have bad outcomes. There's a lot of just thoughtless bad actors, honestly. I think they think they're doing cool, good things for humanity, but they're just kind of leaving a trail of destruction in their wake.
Yeah.
And being like, someone else will figure that out later. So
Women will figure it out later.
we can collectively make choices.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest one is like we have choices about where we shop and where we spend, which tools we do
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
So you can make choices. You don't have to use Claude or ChatGPT, turns out. There are alternatives. So you
All
think
sorts of
about,
things.
I don't like the choices they're making about the data centers. I don't like the choices they're making about Department of Defense stuff. Okay, well, great. Let's have that conversation. That's a conversation I'm certainly happy to have with people too. It's like let's talk
Hmm.
about different platforms then. And I always plug Change Agent, which is fine because I
Yep.
love my friends over there. But like, there are other tools that
Hmm.
people need to consider in their idea of what does it mean to be to do responsible AI in my
Yeah.
organization. That's probably one of the, in addition to the internal organizational opportunities for conversation, that's an active responsibility. Also, which tools you use, that's a big one.
Hmm.
How you use it, back to this sort of like
Yep.
sustainable day-to-day practices of all that, that's another piece of it. So they're kind of
Yep.
components that create a responsible practice. So
Hmm.
there, I just created my own blog post. There you go. Perfect. We got those. So, um, but those are the things. Thank you for bringing responsible as a framework that's different than like sustainable. And then again, we're going to unpack even the agency side a little bit more. So next week I will be joined by Gozi Ibuanu from Technology Association of Grant Makers on my next Untangled to wrap up our spring 26 season. But Valerie Ehrlich from Mission Bloom, thank you for the lovely conversation. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. This was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it was fun. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday out there in LinkedIn land or wherever you are listening to this in the future. It's Jen Fraser with another episode of Untangled. Thanks so much